Welcome to our weekly discussion, Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHAS Crusade for Children. Joining us today, as always, a distinguished panel. Reverend Daniel Corrie Shull, Burnett Avenue Baptist Church. Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville. Reverend Sally McClain, Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. And Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition. LMPD Chief of Police, Jacqueline Gwen Boelli, has been placed on paid administrative leave. The mayor making the announcement in a quickly called press conference Wednesday afternoon.
I have placed Chief Jacqueline Gwen Boelli on administrative leave.
Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg, facing multiple news cameras late Wednesday, explained why the LMPD chief, who assumed that role less than a year ago, is now on paid leave.
Following concerns recently brought to my attention regarding how Chief Gwen Boelli handled a workplace sexual harassment allegation involving LMPD officers. I will not tolerate sexual misconduct in Louisville Metro government, including in LMPD.
Greenberg said Gwen Villarroel was not involved in the alleged sexual misconduct, and the investigation is surrounding her handling of the situation. Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey will be taking over as acting chief. The investigation will be led by this man, former FBI agent David Byer. Greenberg said Byer will be leading an investigation independent from Louisville Metro government. Byer is the same attorney who led the 2022 investigation into the numerous deaths at Metro Corrections and the 2020 investigation into the former TARC director for alleged sexual misconduct.
This situation is especially concerning, given that just last March, the United States Department of Justice raised serious concerns about LMPD's handling of sexual misconduct allegations.
In the scathing report, the DOJ found that, quote, LMPD does not adequately investigate officers accused of sexual misconduct and domestic violence, end quote, saying the LMPD units that conduct criminal and administrative investigations into LMPD misconduct promise thorough investigations. But the DOJ reviewed numerous cases where the investigators failed to gather or seemed to disregard evidence that could corroborate women's accounts. When asked about the federal consent decree, which has still not been implemented almost a year and a half after being announced, Greenberg said the city is taking it, quote, very seriously.
Acting Chief Humphrey and others on the command staff, along with members of my administration, put in countless hours every day of the week working with the DOJ on a consent decree. We take the findings seriously. We take reform and improvement to LMPD seriously. We take transparency and accountability in all of Metro government very seriously.
It's unknown how long Gwen Villarroel will be placed on paid administrative leave.
So panel, lots of questions still surround this story. And now an audio recording has been released with the chief and her command staff that took place on May 22nd that may have led to this decision. You can listen to that audio on WHS11.com. It's about 13 minutes. But panel, what needs to be done? And where does the city and LMPD go from here?
Listening to the audio, when the officer announced that this person had been harassing her, then there was this pause, this calm, there was nothing said. It was like the whole room got absolutely quiet. And then it was a little confusing because it was then that she announced that the same person who was accused of harassment has just been rewarded and elevated to major, is it correct?
Lieutenant Colonel.
So, Lieutenant Colonel. And now we understand that he has not been made in that position yet. So I assume that there's an ongoing investigation to reveal whether or not, or to go into the details of this incident.
I think there's, I think first of all, I have a lot of respect for police officers. They have a very difficult task. I know quite a few of them, and may have many good officers. But one of the challenges over the last couple of years, and I'm sure our other ministers here would recognize it, is a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. I've been involved in several organizations trying to improve that, and every time it seems like doors get shut. Like, we'll go this far, but we won't go this far. And with no explanation. So when the mayor says transparency and accountability, he hasn't done that with the police department, and quite frankly. And again, after the Scotty Scheffler incident at PGA and all, not turning on your cameras and how that was kind of handled, it really gives a black eye to so many officers, which I think is tragic. But on the other hand, there's a problem in the culture and the leadership. And how do we solve that problem?
Well, I'm very sensitive to language. So in reference to a black eye, I would change that color around in the
Okay.
application. So
Accepted.
just for the record. And that appears to be the case with the police department and the DOJ report. The intent was to make everything transparent. And this mayor has not done a good job at that so far. And in addition to that, the chief has been, on the record of exposing some improprieties at her own judgment, some things she said that was not true, proven to not be true. So that just raises another concern. So it's just more of the culture. I remember when I was working with the Ministerial Coalition, when Chief White came on board, we proposed a 5-point plan to restore hope and trust in the city and the police department. One of which was transparency, one of which was to have some citizen review to provide oversight into police conduct and misconduct. Because the police department, as a general rule, is not inclined to be honest and forthcoming. Their first response is, there's nothing to see here. Their first response is to deny that something had happened that may even remotely be disparaging to the image of the police department. So that's a natural response. And it appears that may have been the cultural knee-jerk reaction of the chief here to try to squash it before it comes out. I understand just recently the mayor had done something similar where he didn't want a report that was conducted by the University of Louisville.
I'm well aware of that one.
About some, misconduct of some sort.
It was the history of policing
History
in Louisville.
in Louisville, okay, which was not complimentary. It was true, but not complimentary. So he again gave in to the need to suppress information that could have been enlightening in terms of some police misconduct. So it goes beyond just the police department, goes beyond the chief, goes beyond officials. The natural inclination is to say there's nothing wrong here. It even goes back to previous administration. If you recall with Breonna Taylor, that she was killed in March. Really didn't become a big story until May. And when the incident happened, it was regarded as just another police incident. Again, there was nothing to see here. But it was only until the family decided to sue that the whole story came out. I realized just how terrible it was in terms of the reporting, the particulars about the incident. So it's more of the same of covering things up. Now this consent decree is very serious business.
Amen.
I've had the experience with a consent decree with another public utility here with MSD. I worked there, and they wanted a consent decree. And the consent decrees are serious business. They carry a lot of weight. And in consent decrees, they comb through the particulars, they dot I's and cross T's, and they make sure that everything is adhered to the letter. So I at least appreciate the mayor seeing that this was an occasion where he needed to step up and do something, because the weight of that consent decree was barking in his ear, and he could not yet afford yet another incident of something of this nature to come out. So I commend him for having the courage to do what was uncomfortable to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's lamentable that at a time when the public's confidence in the police department is probably at an all-time low, this incident has lowered it even further. We have a severe lack of confidence in those who are sworn to serve and protect. They can't deal with sexual assault within their own ranks appropriately, then how can they be expected to deal with those type of scenarios with the general public of which they're employed to serve? So this reveals, I think, a critical inflex point really for not only the mayor and his administration, but for the city as a whole. Will we move forward in the creation of more healthy policing practices? Will we hear the recommendations that have been provided by the Department of Justice, but also by grassroots organizations and community advocates? Or will we continue to go down this road of really sweeping things under the rug until they are exposed publicly and they demand a public sanctioning? With this instance, we never would have heard about it had someone not recorded it. Had it never been recorded, and I don't know whether this recording was done in secret. I imagine that it was. But had that person not recorded it, we would have never known about it, and this type of culture would have been perpetuated. And so I think we have a lot of decisions to make here as a community, and I applaud the mayor for taking this bold action. He could have done something different in that he just hired the police chief, I guess a little less than a year ago officially, but he took a bold stand and did what was the ethical thing to do in this situation.
Well, it's a story we'll certainly be following. We turn now to Washington, D.C., and for the first time, a child of a sitting president has been convicted of a felony. Hunter Biden found guilty this week on all 3 counts for illegally purchasing and possessing a gun while using drugs.
After 3 hours of deliberations, the jury in Hunter Biden's federal criminal trial reached a verdict. The defendant raced back to the courthouse to hear guilty on all 3 felony counts for lying about his drug use on a gun application in 2018 and for possessing a gun while abusing drugs, the first ever criminal convictions for the child of a sitting U.S. president. At first, Hunter Biden appeared stunned when he heard the word guilty. Then he nodded, patted his lawyer on the back, and hugged his legal team and his wife. Moments later, Hunter walked out of the courthouse, hand in hand with his wife Melissa on one side and his mother, the First Lady, on the other. Moments after the verdict, I met with juror number 10 in the garage. He revealed a remarkable scene inside the jury room when they started deliberating. A jury split right down the middle, 6-6.
Believe it or not, it was a split vote.
6-6.
6-6.
That was the first vote.
That was the first vote.
But all that changed when they talked it over. Juror 10 says Hunter Biden knew he was an addict when he filled out that background check. Some of the critical evidence for him, Hunter's own text message sent the day after he bought that gun, saying he was waiting for a dealer named Mookie.
If you're an addict, you're an addict.
Right.
This is something that sticks with you for the rest of your life.
So you didn't buy the notion that for those few days around the purchase of the gun, he wasn't abusing drugs?
No, not at all.
Juror number 8, Elijah Lewis Guy, agrees.
For you as juror, what was the most important evidence for you?
The important evidence was the form, what he put down in the form at that moment, and knowing his history, that he was a user addict.
And as for the historic nature of this trial?
You do know that you convicted the president's son. How do you feel about that?
I don't care. I shouldn't say that. It's unfortunate that he's convicted, but him being the son is not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that he did a bad thing, and actions have consequences.
So this trial comes on the heels of former President Trump's conviction on felony charges related to hush money payment to boost his chances of winning the 2016 election. So panel, certainly comment on that story, but my question to you really is, are the courts becoming the new method to attack political opponents or the family members of those opponents, and how dangerous is that to our country and our democracy?
I don't think so.
Okay, real good.
I don't think so. I think something must be in the water. I don't know what's in the water, but at least in these two instances, it seems that the justice system is actually working.
Amen.
It seems that justice is actually potentially colorblind, and it is not showing the historic regard for wealth and class, and I think that is something that should be celebrated. Hunter Biden broke the law, and he was convicted in doing that. Donald Trump broke the law, and he was convicted as such. I think to cast it or frame those convictions as the work of political maneuvering or an attempt to undo one's political opponents is to really disrespect the rule of law, which many people in this nation have, worked for so very long, just to have a justice system that is equal, that holds people to the standard of the law without giving respect to their standing in society, to their economics, to their wealth, their prestige, and even their being related to or themselves being a president or a former president. So I think these two convictions are worthy of celebration.
I would agree. I would think the rule of law is fundamental to our democracy. And you pick a jury of your peers, they make a decision. And I thought it's interesting in talking to both the two we just heard who were jurors and at least some of the conversation of the people that were in the Trump jury system. It's like it didn't make any difference who these people were, what their titles were. It's like, what's the facts of the case? What's the law of the case? Accountability we need to do. And I think that's basic and fundamental to our American society. And I think the weaponization, as we keep saying, I think there's a potential of that, certainly, but I don't think that's, it seems like in watching some of these cases, the judges did what they were supposed to do and try to be as fair as possible. And that's where we stand. Are they perfect? No system is perfect. But I think accountability was achieved in both cases.
I agree with both of you. My hope and my prayer during all of this polarization with our country at this time is that the court system holds. Regardless of the issue, I want the court system to hold. And that is our saving grace for what's going on right now. However, I think that many families have dealt with addiction. And, I'm hoping that there will be some mercy shown in the fact that he is in recovery. He has worked to be out of the process. He has worked his way out of the process of addiction. And hopefully, my hope is that people understand that and that there will be some element in compassion when he's sentenced.
I agree with all this said about the courts. A few things. The system, the court system, has proven to kind of be our saving grace. It's proven that the three, agency or divisions of government, branches of government, three. Thank you, sir. Executive, legislative, and judicial are all equal in part, but the court appears to be the sane one in all of this. The balancing force that's keeping things together. So in that sense, it's good. The fact that there's two persons of great privilege have been convicted within a week or two of each other speaks a lot about the justice system. Sad to say, many people who are caught up in the justice system are disproportionately the poor. When you go to the Hall of Justice, like Richard Pryor said, when you go to seeking justice down there, all you see is just us, disproportionately. So that is something that is unique in this particular situation. With respect to Hunter and the gun situation, there's a song Motown called "The Hunter Gets Captured by the Game," one of my favorite songs. And what's the whole word coming to? Seems like things are not the same anytime the hunter gets captured by the game. In this instance, Hunter is the game. The hunters are those that's accusing the system of not being equal, and that they were expecting Hunter to get off, being the mega crowd in general, but he didn't. So Hunter got captured, and he got captured, and it brings a contradiction to the narrative they use all the time, which is guns. So the very thing they trumpet all the time has been flipped back on them when they say gun, 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 Second Amendment, Second Amendment. Now, it's like the dog chasing the car. You've been chasing that car, then you got it. Now what you gonna do with it? So he got convicted on gun charges, and since they're so pro-gun, they're silent because of this gun-related charge that he was convicted on that they so affectionately cherish. So now it kind of checkmates them, so they can't really criticize it too much, and also keeps them from accusing this trial from being politicized. So it kind of has a unique way of providing some sense of justice with the narrative that's being made in the public discourse. I think that every parent has had some level of disappointment with their children, from this first family to the very first family of Adam and Eve. So everybody has had experienced some disappointment with their children, and this is no different. And Biden, of course, he said, I'm a father. This being the Father's Day weekend, I know he feels the pain of his child being caught in the clutches of this. But the law is what it is. It's a binary decision. Either you check the box or you didn't. Either you're guilty or you're not. So the reality is that he met the criteria of a guilty conviction. He was guilty because he was guilty. And that's just the fact of the matter. So I think it really is going to serve well, in my view, with proving that the justice system kind of is working, and in many respects is our saving grace right now.
You know, one thing I think is noteworthy about both of these convictions, the Trump convictions and the Biden conviction, is that the jurors in the Biden case spoke freely on camera, boldly, unabashedly even, whereas we still have not seen the jurors from the Trump convictions, which I think makes a huge statement about the climate of our nation. Whereas the jurors who were on the Biden case have no fear of reprisal. Those who were on the Trump case fear for their lives, of their identities, are they ever be released.
And they appear to be, the Trump jurors, appears to be kind of cut from the cloth of some of his, peers, so to speak, lawyers, professionals, et cetera, et cetera. You had some regular folk there, but in general, they were New Yorkers, hometown boys. I don't know if a prophet's never received a home. I don't know if that applies, but that's his home folk.
But the fact that they don't feel bold enough to have interviews, whereas the people who were
the climate of retaliation is very real.
That's an interesting point. Okay, let's move on. Let's come back home here to Lexington. For the first time ever, Kentucky baseball is headed to the College World Series, and their coach knows why.
The pitch. Strike three called, and for the first time, Kentucky is headed to the College World Series. Just explain to us what's running through your mind right now.
All I can think of is to God be the glory. Only He could make something like this happen. So that's all I can think about is how thankful I am. God gets all the glory. Only He can write this story.
Coach, can you tell us how long have you been thinking about this specific moment right here?
Since the day I got hired. When Mitch Barnhart gave me this opportunity, and an opportunity of a lifetime. He took a chance. He took a chance on me. Never been a head coach at any level. Never been a T-ball head coach, never been a Little League head coach, high school coach. I've never been a head coach in my entire life. And Mitch Barnhart says, I want you to be the coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. You can't make this up. Only God can write this story. That's what's going through my head. Just gratitude. My heart is...
So he went on in his post-game press conference with his wife and son by his side to give a very powerful testimony. He went on at length about it. He had a breaking point in 2022, and he just turned everything over to the Lord. I encourage you to go find it on YouTube. It's fantastic. But it seems like no better place to discuss this than on Moral Side of the News. So,
yeah, a lot of poetry. I mean, it's a long shot. Everybody, it's lovable. So who can not like this story?
Right.
UK.
Well, I don't like it.
I know it's UK.
I live in Louisville.
I know, but Louisville gets glory in the story. You know why? They could not have won that series, and they will not win this next series without a Louisville slugger.
Oh, there you
So
go.
Louisville's going to get some glory out of this story one way or the other.
You know what? You're right.
You're right.
And
So we'll take it any way we can.
And they live in the state of Louisville.
The
I
state.
guess you're right.
So
That's
they
simply
take
a
every
And I'm sure
bat
they
is
have
gonna
some
have
Louisville players
Louisville
on that
it.
team.
Right. So that's good. I mean, so we're going to get in it. So we love a win in the state. You know, they're taking the state with them. It's not basketball and it's not football.
Right.
Okay. So that's good. He's a long shot. Everybody loves a long shot story. He's giving the glory to God, so I can't argue against that. God can do some pretty amazing things. I'm a living witness to that. So it's a great story, and I think Louisville's going with them, and I'm going to be cheering them on the victory.
I think it's great to see that, you know, Louisville's been in it 4 times, and Kentucky has been in it. I said, who would have thought Kentucky was a baseball capital of college baseball, which is kind of interesting compared to football and certainly basketball. But what I liked about that is, and the new coaches that we have both for UK and U of L seem to be very enthusiastic people, and it's fresh air. And somebody like him, praising God, of course, that's always a good thing, but also from nowhere, I've been able to be a head coach here, and that's a great story for all of us to hear.
I'm going to put a glitch in it a little bit because I know people who were genuinely good people who prayed and prayed and prayed for an outcome, and it didn't turn out their way. I'm really glad that that happened for this person. I'm just saying that, you know, it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
And so the expectation and the fact that he is claiming that it did happen the way it happened, that's a good thing. I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying I have done many a funeral for many a good person who prayed and prayed that, you know, they could get through that.
Very good. Thank you for watching Moral Side of the News this week. As always, you can check us out on YouTube. Thanks to our panelists this week. And happy Father's Day, and have a great week.
Amen.